All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to do a little All right, welcome everyone to episode 1 of the Rapid Results with Andrew Weiss. I am more than excited to bring on our first guest, Tristan Ableson. And for those who don't know, Tristan and I are in a mastermind together called ISI, stands for Iron Sharpens Iron. It's how we got connected. And I wanted to bring Tristan on first because of the fact that he's an avid Jesus follower. He's an audio engineer. He got his dream job right out of college. He always has something insightful to say, and he knows how to get things done very quickly. And so with that said, Tristan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, reaching out. Yeah, no, it was great to meet you in ISI, and past year or so that we've been getting to know each other. Really appreciate the insight that you have as well and enthusiasm. So I'm excited for what you're doing. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Yes. And yeah, so for everyone watching and tuning in, this is episode 1. So thank you again for your patience. If there's any tech difficulties, luckily we have an audio engineer who is here to save the day. And as you can see, he's got his nice fancy mic though. But regardless, I created this show to help serve more people. So this is all about helping more. And so with that said, Tristan, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about your family upbringing. Don't you have like 10 brothers and sisters?
Yeah, close to that. No, yeah. So I'm Tristan Ableson, and I grew up in New Jersey, about an hour from New York City, 2 hours from Philly, so kind of in the northwest corner of New Jersey. Um, Most people think of New Jersey as like the armpit of New York, but where I came from, it's more like a few minutes away from farmland. It's closer to that than to the city. So people here in New Jersey, they always get the wrong idea. Um, but yeah, so I grew up, and I didn't have, maybe the traditional path that a lot of people have in that come from a big family. I'm the second oldest of 7 kids, so I've got an older sister and 5 younger siblings, and and on top of that, I was homeschooled, so very different background. Um, Homeschooled, from preschool through high school and all the way through. And yeah, so basically, I grew up in a home where my parents they raised all of us to believe in Jesus, as our Lord and Savior, and that more than anything else that they've taught me has shaped the direction of my life, and kind of kept me grounded and given me purpose. And I'm sure we're going to dive more into that later. But that's kind of my background, my upbringing. So big family, homeschooled, and yeah, from there, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after high school. I had some ideas. I played music all growing up, so I had some dreams of doing stuff like that. I also did a lot of robotics stuff. I was really into mechanical and electrical engineering in middle school and high school. So I also thought I was going to do that. So I
Yeah.
had kind of these two things battling, and was going to apply to some engineering schools. Something kind of snapped, and decided that I didn't really want to do that anymore. And so I was going to a community college, just commuting from home for about a year and a half, and I found an audio engineering program at this school, which, for those of you who don't know, like, this program specifically was focused on music recording, and so it was kind of the perfect marriage of all of the music background that I had and loved, as well as the technical audio, or the technical engineering side of the all the robotics and stuff. So it was kind of a, yeah, perfect marriage of those two, and really dived into that, and ended up moving down to Nashville beginning of 2018, and went to a couple different schools down here, and just graduated with my bachelor's of science back in May of this year. I'm sorry, May of 2021. Um, yeah, and since then, it's been a cool journey. I just landed sweet full-time job doing audio. And that was back in September. So really enjoying it so far. That's a quick
Congratulations.
summary.
Yeah, no, and we'll dive into those topics. And I know we're in a world where homeschool isn't as common, and so if you don't mind talking about that, tell us about your homeschool experience. Like, was religion and Jesus a big part of that, or did you kind of come up with that on your own a little bit? Tell us about that journey.
The homeschooling itself, I don't know that was I wouldn't call that a religious decision for my parents. How they got to that. It was more that they saw some issues in the school system, and they weren't confident in. They didn't have a whole lot of confidence in what was being taught, and the influence of teachers on students and other students on students. Just some of the negative influences that happen so often there. And there are pros and cons to both of them. Many of both. People always ask me like, "Oh, you're homeschooled. Didn't you have a social life?" Like, and yes, I did. It was different. Um, and so yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. Lots of good and lots of bad, and that's a long conversation in and of itself. But no, I wouldn't say that it was a religious decision. But what it did allow was the was in my education. It allowed my parents to the Bible speaks about training your children up in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. And so it allowed for the inclusion of spiritual growth in my education. And one thing that I've realized, like throughout my life, and especially more recently, just how much it matters that we are integrated humans, rather than having like a professional. Like, it's so easy to categorize different things, like have a professional and a personal and a relational and a financial and a spiritual, all these different categories of our life. And yeah, it's just become like really evident that we shouldn't be doing that so much. They all kind of fit together, and they can't be separated like that. They shouldn't be. They all form the picture of who we are. And yeah, so throughout homeschooling, my parents had the opportunity to really speak into my life and kind of integrate that well. And it also allowed for a ton of flexibility and gaining experience that I never would have gotten in a public school. I was able to work with my dad's a business owner, does IT and programming stuff. So I was able to get plugged in with his company and work from a very young age and just get experience, whether it was like interacting with clients day to day or talking on the phone. So I gained, different skills and got to see the inside working of a business that most kids my age just have no access to. So lots. It was a full and varied education. Just looked very different from traditional path.
I like what you said about being able to integrate the personal, professional, and the spiritual, and how people don't realize the importance of like the integration, the balance of those. Can you tell us more about how you are able to blend all those together and make sure you stay on top of all that?
Yeah, I think that the most important part is that you have a foundation. Like who are you? Who am I? And what is life all about? Because the way that we, when we don't have kind of a center of our life, when we don't have that foundation, it's really easy to like the only option we have really is to separate all those categories out and set goals and different things for each of those categories. And that's all great. Don't hear me wrong. Setting goals is great. But I think what's more important is having a true identity and having your actions kind of fulfill your identity, what you believe about yourself. And what I mean about that is like personally, I can only speak for myself, right? I believe that I am, created by God, and I believe that, my nature is to rebel against God. Like, God knows best for me, And, in my nature, when I'm doing things my own way, I rebel and I run from God. And, God, in his great love, he sent Jesus uh, to basically bridge the gap between me and God. God never left me. I left God. And so the more I get to know, the more I study the Bible, the Word of God, and get to know the character of God, the more I see just how loving He really is. And people always hear like, "Oh, God's super judgmental. God is he's an angry God." And you read the Bible, and sometimes that's true. God is an angry God, and yet you can't be a loving God without showing anger at sometimes, because really God created us to walk with him. And when we run our own way, God, here's an analogy. uh I was at my girlfriend's house over Christmas, and she was training her dog with some little treats, and she was trying to get him to stay. And you know dog wants nothing more than to eat this little thing, but she sits him down, gets him to sit, and she starts walking away backward with this little treat. She sets it on the ground about 10 feet away, and the dog is just like, you can just see him quivering. He wants to jump and go grab that food. And sometimes I think from the outside, a lot of people believe that that's what God is like, in in that there's something good and he's keeping us away from it. And that's not it at all. Really, God is telling us to stay and not to touch that, because what we think is a treat is actually poison. And we just can't see it. God knows so much better than we do. And so, you know wrapping back to your question, I trust the Lord and I trust him, and he is the foundation of my life. I'm living for the glory of God. In my weakness and my failure, that is my purpose, and everything around, and that forms my goals. That forms my identity. I'm a child of God by the grace of his son Jesus. And so that forms every single other aspect of my life. And so, yeah, I do set goals for different, where I want to see progress, where I want to grow. But it really comes out of that.
I really like that dog and treat analogy, because I know it's also the importance of remembering too that just because a door is closed doesn't mean a better door isn't going to open for you, kind of thing. I know that it's interesting, about the poison is like temptation of, I mean, for those who've read Screw Tape Letters. Have you read that book yet, Tristan?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So just yeah, such a great book on us talking about like, oh, it's it goes back to the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making the world believe that he didn't exist. And so if you're not aware of the temptations and the poison in the first place, you're like, oh, what's this tree? Oh, it looks great, but you don't realize the negative consequences of that. So I like that analogy. And I know this is kind of a loaded question, because obviously you can have a 10-week seminar on this, but since I want this to be like a rapid results theme, what do you believe are the questions you need to ask yourself, or the things you need to do to kind of discover who you are in the fastest way possible?
The way to discover who I am in the fastest way possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and here's maybe one of the points where you and I could have some healthy debate,
Yeah.
because I'm very firm about what I believe, and I only believe it because I actually think it's true, right? I don't
Yeah.
want anybody to believe something if there's no evidence for it, and I see a ton of evidence for it, for the fact that there is a God and that he loves us. And so that's where my identity comes from, because I see that God has been trustworthy in so many areas. And and so when he says something about me, I listen to it. And so my identity, I get my identity by hearing what God has said about me. I think that there's a lot, and I think that that's the only true place to find identity. I think there's lots of ways to look, and lots of ways to trick ourselves into believing things about ourselves. And especially in today's day, everyone has their own truth, um, things that they believe about themselves. And really a lot of times it's not grounded in anything. It's like, it's just printing fake money. It's not rooted. It's not backed by anything. It's just, it's like, oh, I'm an astronaut. Am I? Show me some evidence. Like, no, you're not. So yeah, that's where my identity comes from. And I'm not going to pretend that it comes from anywhere else. So I would say dig into the Word of God and see what He says about you. There's a lot there.
So just summarize, make sure we're on the same page here. So yeah, so you define yourself by your love of God, essentially.
Quite the opposite. I define myself by the fact that He loves me, and He died for me, and He says that I'm valued. And in the beginning of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, He creates the world, and He creates man, and He says creation is very good. Or He says creation is good. He creates humans, and He says this is very good. And that was before He gave anybody He didn't give them a job until after that. And so the entire Bible, from beginning to end, starts with the premise that God is really happy with what He made, that we are good in His sight. Like He's just thrilled with His creation, and He's sad when we walk away from Him. But basically, my identity comes in the fact that it's not based on what I do. It's not based on what I think about myself. It's based on the fact that God says that that He made me, and He sees me as very good. And that takes, look around us. Humans take all kinds of different shapes and sizes, right? And different career ambitions and all these things. And the fact of the matter is that our identity is not based off of how much money we make. You can set goals, and that can be a great goal for you. But even when you achieve that, you talk to the richest people in the world. Are you happy? Like, how much money is enough? Just a little bit more, right? Like, all kinds of quotes like that. And you hear that, and all these people are chasing things, thinking that once they get there, they will be who they want to be. And it's just not true. It's just empty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I know. No, I agree. That is the top trap that people fall into, is that I'll be happy when, or I'll be satisfied when, or finally I can do this when, or I can finally do this when this happens. And I think it's like Jim Rohn. He says, like, when what, like, just understand that it's okay to be happy today, no matter where you are, but while still going on the path of wanting to create that quote unquote dream life and feeling as if it's already happened. So I like that. And so going back to the questions, how about, what do you think is the fastest way for people to connect with God and to feel His love, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's a loaded question. So I think that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of cultural implications, and especially in the United States, there's a church on every corner. And I would argue that a lot of those people, a lot of people today, like, and even in the church, don't have a good understanding of their true identity. And a lot of it is based around the things I do so that God will like me again,
Mm-hmm.
or like me at all. They miss the point that God liked them in the first place. And God loves us so much. And it's not that God doesn't like us. It's the fact that we are rejecting God and going our own way. And so it's the fact of, I think, just digging into the Word of God, and especially in the New Testament, like looking at Jesus, who is God, the way that He acts around people who, there's a perfect example. You see, like, the religious leaders of the day who on paper did every single thing right, but they missed the heart of it. They were doing the things for the sake of it, rather than doing those things that God had, He gave them pretty clear instructions in different areas about how they should live and work and do these things. And the religious leaders, they took that, and they did those things perfectly, but for all the wrong reasons. And Jesus showed up and He didn't have a crown on. He didn't come in a chariot. He was born in a stable, like in the dirt. And He said, "This is how much I love you. speaking to the world, this is how much I love you, that I'm going to join you. And he hung out with, the people in that day and age who were, they were called the tax collectors and sinners, who were just the lowest in that population at that time. And so, yeah, you look at Jesus and say, he is a reflection, like he is God. By looking at him and what he does and why he does it, you get to know the heart of God. And so, yeah, I think that's how you get to know. That's how you get to know the Lord, and just study the Word, figure out what it's speaking, and try to separate from all the kind of implications that religion and Christianity have to do in today's day and age, and especially how it's become entangled in politics. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, go find out what Jesus is actually like. Don't judge don't judge whether it's true or not by how the people today, the people that you see around you at any given church, are who say that they're following Jesus. Don't go by how they live. Go find out what Jesus says about himself. Go see what he actually lives out, and that's how you get to know God.
Yeah, I like that. And kind of transitioning a little bit here too. Obviously, God and Jesus are very big influences, and dare I say, mentors in your life. Tell us more about who else in your life growing up has inspired you and made you want to be the best you can be outside of God and Jesus.
Yeah, my dad has been a huge influence. I mentioned before about him. Just we were homeschooled, so he and my mom, they both really dived in and were heavily invested in educating us, and not for the sake of just education, but they actually wanted us to be effective and productive in life after, right? Like, what's the point of education? To prepare. And so I think that he and my mom, imperfectly, as I think they would admit as well, they just did a great job of exposing me to things and putting me in uncomfortable situations where I had to learn and adapt. And especially, I mentioned, like, just talking on the phone, like, to clients at my dad's business from a young age. I think that just gave me a lot of experience. And so yeah, long story short, to answer your question, my dad has been a huge mentor in my life. And I've had various mentors, including employees at that same company, who kind of took me under their wing and taught me, and really, more than was required of them. They stepped out and they took an interest in me, and yeah. So I can name a couple of them, like a guy named Vincent Nordfors, who's operations manager at the company. He took me under his wing and trained me technically and personally. And another guy, Phil Beach, who's kind of in school. I've had a bunch. Joe Baldridge, Nick Palladino has been a huge guy in my life, and he's actually the one who helped me land the job that I have today. And so, kind of as a segue more into, like, career stuff. Yeah, this guy, I was pursuing audio for music at school for the longest time, and was just kind of getting a little worn out, and didn't have the passion or the enthusiasm that I used to have, or even that I saw other people around me in the same classes. Like, they were super geeked out about that, and I was kind of, apathetic. And I transitioned more into doing audio for film and TV, called audio post-production, and just really fell in love with it there. And the professor, and in large part because of this guy, Nick Palladino. And he's done a lot of work on some really cool projects over the years. And he's retired, but he still teaches at Belmont University in Nashville, which is where I was studying. And yeah, so I took a few classes with him, and I helped him out. I did an independent study with him, did some worked as a TA with him. So it just, got a lot of time with him and learned from him. And when an opportunity came up and an industry professional reached out to him to ask for, referral to a student to hire, him and a couple other faculty at Belmont, they all gave him my name. And so it's just really cool how that happened. And it all came through this one relationship.
I love that. And I definitely believe that none of us would be where we are today had it not been for positive influences and mentors, and obviously one of your mentors literally helped you land your dream job, which is huge. And congratulations again on that. And for those listening out there, what advice would you give to people if they wanted to get mentors faster, get mentors, more quickly in their life?
Yeah, I think it comes down to investing in relationships, even if you don't think that there's anything to be gained. I think there are a lot of people that would just invest to, people talk about the power of networking all the time, and how you should spend time around, the people who are doing what you want to do and who have connections. And yeah, that's 100% true. Networking is huge. I also think that can be kind of selfish and self-serving sometimes when we're using people in a way to just get what we want. And I think that just showing up and being real with people and investing in them back, I think that that's huge. And I didn't spend time with Nick for this, in the hopes that he would get me this job. Yeah, I had an idea of that in the back of my head. I just thought he was a cool guy and he knew a lot and I wanted to learn from him. Right. And in the ways that I could, I wanted to invest in him as well. And that's how I was approaching that relationship. And, he was gracious enough to extend, invest in me and give me the opportunity, because I think he knew that I wasn't just milking him for opportunities later on. He could sense that I was genuine. And when I asked him questions, I wasn't hinting at, he just, I think he got a sense that I actually cared about him as a person. And so, yeah, spend time around the people who are doing what you want to do, network, but also invest in them for the sake of them as people, and see how you can serve them as well.
And what does that mean to invest into a relationship or invest into someone without, quote unquote, getting or wanting anything out of it?
I think that it means, yeah, that's a good question. I think that it means that we show up and we treat everyone the same in a in the sense of we don't view people as just ways that we can gain. That's a really good question that I need to give some thought to, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything that comes to mind, like with Nick, for example? So you met and you just said, "Hey, I want to learn from you. Can we meet like once a month or something?" And like obviously you never went up to and said, "Hey, Nick, I'm only going to talk to you because I know you're going to find me a job someday." Like, how did you specifically approach that relationship, for example, or you felt like you were investing while being genuine, while making it clear like that, yeah, you do want to be hopefully beneficial for them, because I know a lot of people do get satisfaction, happiness out of helping others. So I'm just curious if there's any moments, like, did you write an extra card to them? Did you buy them coffee? Anything that kind of comes to mind there?
Nothing so formal or intentional in that way, because again, I think that doing those things it can circle back to like a motive. A lot of times it can, and it's, there's a motive, but it's kind of disguised in just trying to be friendly. um and I think more accurately, I think what we should do is just care about people because they're people, and and learn what they have to say, learn about their lives, invest in them, know their wife's name or their kids' names, like all those things, like actually learn about them and invest in. You can't invest heavily in every person. That's just impossible. But in the people that you are interacting with day to day, yeah, go deep with them and put your motive to the side. If something happens, great. If not, you have a great friend.
I love that. Love that. And I know people love talking about mentors and acquiring them and connecting with them. Um, Tell us more about, if you look back at, sounds like you've had a lot of mentors throughout your life. In your opinion, you don't have to mention names, of course, which relationships have worked better than others and why?
The ones that have worked the best, and that's a loaded thing in and of itself. Like what does it mean to, like, for a relationship to work for you or a mentorship to work for you? Um, yeah, if you go into it with the specific intention of learning things, then I think that a lot of people can be really good mentors. But like if you enter a mentorship for with the specific goal of learning about a specific category of life, right? For instance, professional or spiritual, right? Then you can learn from a lot of people. But I think that the best mentors are when there's a common belief system, and you get to look at how they model their lives, and again, going back to what we talked about before, like integrating those different categories of their life. I think that those are the best mentors that you can connect with, at a foundational level, not just subject matter.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, and then another kind of segue from mentoring, networking. I know some people just kind of shiver and do the face palm and say, "Ah, networking again. I hate that word." But obviously, networking is what helped you find your dream job right out of college, which is huge, which is what every college student wants. And I believe that yeah, networking is so crucial. But in order for you to continue to help others, or for you to give advice to your past self, what advice would you give to your past self or to others about networking in general?
Well, I don't know that I networked very well at all. I really don't think that I did. Um, I had classes with these professors, and I went deep with the people that I was around, and I invested in the relationships that I had, and where I saw potential, like, wow, I could really learn from this person. I was very intentional in that sense. Um, I I would spend a lot of time with them. I would talk to them. I would stay after class, and just invest outside of all the required areas. I don't know that, especially in school, I don't know that I networked very well. Um, there are a lot of people that did it really well, around me, who were super driven. At the time, I wasn't. I just went really deep with the people around me, and it's paid dividends.
Uh, well, that is very interesting, and I definitely believe you got to give yourself some more credit for that, because yeah, why go 1 inch deep with 100 people when you can go 100 inches deep with one person, kind of thing. Because and just being able to see the importance of, yeah, sometimes I think that's a great example. Your exhibit A, that you don't need to meet everyone, you just need to meet the right people and build the right relationships and have that deep relationship where sounds like you and Nick would do anything for each other, and you can't really do that with 100 people sometimes if you're just spending all this time having one-off conversations. Like I love that example. Like instead of going wide, you went deep. Is that kind of what you're advocating for? Or you're still saying you regret, quote unquote, not networking enough?
I think that I think it hurt to network a little more. I think the power of networking is huge, and also just so yeah, put yourself in awkward positions and learn from it, and do it better next time, and enjoy it a little bit more. Palms won't be quite as sweaty, on round five as round one. Um, but yeah, I'd say, go deep instead of go deep and wide is, uh, go wide, really go deep with a few people. And I'm not saying if you're, living in the basement and you're the 5 people you're around and you just play video games all the time, like go deep with people who are going somewhere and who are living integrated lives. I'm not saying just pick random people and go deep with them. Go deep with the people that you admire and you want to grow with.
Love that. Yeah, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and so I'm glad you helped clarify that. Like, oh, well, I'm going deep with the people who are playing video games all the time, and so clearly that's going to work for me, right? So,
not quite, yeah.
And of course, yes, there are people who get paid a lot of money to play video games, and there are people who don't get paid anything to play video games. So, of course, yeah, it goes back to balance and strategy and different routes. But yeah, I hear you. Just like, yes, you can go deeper with relationships, just making sure you're intentional about it and that it makes sense. And yeah, remember you're the average of 5 people you spend the most time with. So I like that. All right. So as we wrap up a little bit here, I have about 2-3 questions left. And one of the questions is, what do you believe that you can do faster than 90% of the world, and why?
So the keyword there is faster.
Mm-hmm. And it could be something simple as, sprint faster, whether it's being able to learn faster, whether it's just be aware of yourself in a moment with awareness faster, problem solving faster, just kind of anything that comes to mind that you're like, I'm confident I can do this faster than most people.
I think I'm pretty good at cutting through the BS and getting to the heart of something. I don't kind of 2 sides of me. One is a perfectionist that spends way too much time on the details, and so maybe there's something I'm super detail oriented. I rarely miss a detail, and so yeah, that's something I especially in the work that I do with audio engineering, I'm really good at that because I'm detail oriented. I think that I can I can see the forest. I don't get stuck in the trees too often. Definitely better moments than others. But yeah, I think that that's something I can process a lot of information and kind of take the average of it and figure out the heart of something fairly quickly.
And to piggyback off of that, are there any books you recommend people read, or anything that if they wanted to say, how can I be like Tristan, and Tristan, how can I like really see the forest perfectly as well as him? Like, any advice you can give on how they could develop that skill?
Well, this is book number 1, but after that, I think there are a lot of useful ones. There's one book that I listened to. Audiobooks are amazing. That I listened to last year, and it's called "In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day." It's a crazy title, right? It's like, what the heck does that even mean? And inspiration from it comes from a verse in the Bible, and the author just kind of extrapolated on it. But his point is just talking about this one guy who, he saw this like crazy challenge and he didn't back down from it. He was like, there's a lion in a pit on a snowy day. Most of us, including me, I would have run, right? And this guy, like, he just jumped in and he got it done. And so, yeah, I think it's just really kind of inspiring, and just that, just the idea of like running toward our problems and facing them head on. And yeah, this is kind of a side topic, but I think is really important, especially for guys, for men in our generation, is getting in touch with emotions and facing them. Because I think that there's a lot of posturing in today's generation where men have to be just like power through it, grit. It's all willpower. That strength in those areas can be really useful. But I also think that there's a reason that we feel emotions, and don't rely on the emotions, but they're symptoms of an issue. Figure out what that issue is, and address it, and that will I don't know, digging more into that in my own life and in my past, that has helped me so much in a lot of different areas. But yeah, cool book.
I love that. I love that. In a pit with a lion on a snowy day. That's
Yeah, Mark Batterson.
Mark Patterson. All right.
Batterson with a B. Yeah.
Oh, Batterson.
I believe so. Something like that.
Okay. All right. Definitely worth looking up. All right. We have 2 questions left. One of the questions is, when you look back at your life, what do you, Tristan Ableson, want your legacy to be?
It's a big question. I think that money's going to fade. I want to know that I made a difference in people's lives, whether it's meeting their physical needs. I live in Nashville. There are homeless people on every street corner. That's a huge passion of mine, like meeting their physical needs. And so I know that my life mattered, and yeah, it's not so much about like, oh, I want people to miss me when I'm gone. It's bigger than that. I want to know that I lived life well, and like when I meet Jesus, I want to hear the words like, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's the only legacy I need, to know that I lived life well for the glory of God.
I love that. And just do you feel like you'll have reached that when you, sounds like you're passionate about helping homelessness, which I love. And I know a lot of other guys in our ISI group, they are passionate about that too. And I know I would love to help solve that problem as well. Like I'm in New York City, and it definitely breaks my heart going to the subway systems and there's people just sleeping down in the subways. And you're like, gosh, I wish we could help them find a home. And maybe you don't have an answer for this, but is there anything you come to mind where you feel like, okay, because I was able to accomplish this and do this, and maybe it's tangible, maybe it's intangible, you would feel satisfied?
Well, it goes back to identity. It's not about what we do. It's about who we are, and who we are determines what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Because of who I am, because I'm a child of God, because I am trying to live with the heart, with the love that He showed me. I want to show that love to other people. By doing that in the best way that I can, that's how I'm going to find fulfillment. And maybe I'll accomplish all these really cool things that other people will acknowledge, and maybe I won't. But whether it happens or not, it's not going to stop me from trying. My legacy doesn't come from what I think about myself or from what other people think about me. It comes from what God thinks of me. That, if I had to wrap it up, that would be how.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, Tristan, thank you so much for coming on today. Last question is there anything else that you want to say for people looking for rapid results in their life? Anything else that you wish I had asked you or that you wanted to talk about?
I just think that focus, you can't be the best weightlifter and the best marathon runner at the same time. And so, the idea of like long obedience in the same direction, like, hey, I have a goal, and I'm gonna work at that goal until something really changes and I change my mind. I could speak for my own fitness life with like a bunch of like dreams, things that I want to do. I want to be really strong. I want to be really fast. I want to run really far. those are all great goals and they all can be done, but not at the same time. And so kind of take a look and say, okay, in this season, this is what I'm going to focus on. This is what I'm going to do. And until something really changes, doesn't matter how I feel about it, I'm going to keep going.
Love that. Love that. The importance of focus. You can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything. Just important to remember that. And if people want to get a hold of you, Tristan, and contact you and say, oh my gosh, like I'd love to connect more with you, how can they find you? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn would probably. Gosh, I don't even know my my username. Let me check that. Probably just Tristan Ableson.
All right, Tristan Ableson on LinkedIn.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, awesome. Well, thank you again for coming by today, and appreciate you being part of episode 1 of Rapid Results. I wrote down a bunch of timestamps about you talking about networking, about talking about going deep, about talking about getting to the heart of the something, running towards problems, focus, and just the importance of, at the end of the day, it's not your decision, it's God's decision. And just remembering that. And I know I need to, it's my goal to read many books this year. And I definitely know the Holy Bible should probably be on that list. And so my girlfriend, she actually has a Broadway podcast. And so you can check it out for those listening in. It's called the Bible Broadway podcast. But Tristan definitely helped give a great, low down in the meantime. So thank you again for coming on today, Tristan. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Cheers.